Hey fam, welcome to Faith Spaces. Today I want us to chat about changing your mind, changing your identity. It's very simple. I'm going to try to keep this very short as well. But the word that I want us to look at is Romans 12 verse 2, right? And what Romans 12 verse 2 says, do not conform any longer to the pattern or to the way of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Like, hello, right? It's a very short scripture. So, just to read it for you in context, if you don't got a Bible or if you just never read the Bible, Romans 12 verse 1 to verse 3 reads that as follows. Therefore, I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. For by the grace given to me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourselves more highly than you ought to, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment in accordance with the measure of faith God has given you. I will touch a little bit of the context there. So, like, transforming your mind is pre-framed by submitting yourself to God, right? And for me, that's a very important thing, because a lot of times we are stuck in our ways, or we like to think and say that we're stuck in our ways. So I've always done it like this. My family's always done it like this. People know me like this, and that's what I'm going to stick to, right? And so we are opposed to changing, right? And it says to submit yourself to God. And by virtue of submitting yourself to God, God is then able to work in you to change your mind. God is able to work in you to change the way you see things, to change your perspective. Because sometimes the issue is not the thing, but rather how you see the thing, right? And then at the end of this that verse, at the end of Romans 12 verse 2, it says that to think sober-mindedly and to judge things with the faith that God has given you. But just before that, it speaks about in so doing, in changing your mind, then to be able to test God's will, God's good, pleasing, and perfect will, right? And for me, that speaks to saying, based on how you see things, and based on what your perspective is, and based on what your mindset is, you view God a certain way. You view other people a certain way, and you view yourself a certain way. And what God's will for your life is all viewed through that particular lens. What you think God thinks about you, the truth that you know, the lies that are in the back of your mind, all of these things need to be filtered through, and your mind needs to be changed about these things. And it can only be changed in the right way if it's submitted to God, right? So that's my reason for reading the whole thing. But it says that do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world. When you understand that you are special, that you are a new creation, that you're God's child, you begin to understand that there are certain things that habitually happen in the world, that people do, that people never question, that have always been that way, that aren't cool and they're not correct, and you don't have to do that. Okay, you don't have to conform. There are certain things that happen in your family, and you don't have to conform. Maybe people in your family fall pregnant at a certain age, or that they have kids out of wedlock, or people never get married, or people always get divorced, or people struggle with finances. And that's, there are other things to that we can talk about in terms of generational curses and things that you would need to break, and we'll do another video. But when you just look at things that are typical in your family, you may have gotten into a form of thinking that, my parents couldn't do this, so I can't, or my dad wasn't this, so I'm not, or my mom wasn't this, and I'm not. And that's not true, right? So don't conform to the typical. Don't conform to the way people usually do things. Don't conform to the way of this world. Don't conform to what, not just the world, but when we talk about the way of this world, we talk about the things that the devil tries to make a norm, right? So don't conform to that. Just don't conform. There's no need to conform. And for me, that speaks volumes in our generation, where there's the rise of the slay queen, which wasn't bad when Beyonce said slay girl, and then people started slaying in ways that were not so ethical, right? But when you turn the corner and every girl your age in her 20s is with a man twice her age, when everybody is wearing booty shorts and tank tops to the mall, when you're in high school and everybody starts having sex, when you're in certain circles and people are smoking and drinking or trying drugs and experimenting, and you feel like the weird one for not doing it, just because it's what people do when they get to that age or that industry or that area doesn't mean that's what you should do, right? So don't conform to the ways of this world, don't conform to the pattern of this world, don't conform to the things that are intended to keep you bound, the things that are intended to keep you from being all that God has destined you to be, right? So do not be conformed to the way of this world, but be transformed. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, right? That transformation is literally a 180 switch. It's you started out looking this way, and then boom, completely going in the opposite direction, right? So it's transforming from who you are, the way you think, your way of being, everything that became habitual but isn't serving you, right? Transform from those things, transform into the person of Christ, put on the person of Christ, and transform into the person that God has called you to be. And most importantly is to transform by the renewing of your mind, right? You can only change so much based on how much you renew your mind, based on how you renew your mind. So if you've always thought to yourself, I'm not good for nothing, I can't accomplish this, I can't do that, I can't do that, because you haven't transformed your thinking, you haven't changed your thinking, you haven't changed how you see things, you can't transform into a different kind of person, right? So let's say, for example, your goal is to be a successful business person, right? You want to be an entrepreneur, you want to start your own business, fantastic, and you want to transform to be the kind of person that can do that, because your record so far is that you're lazy, you procrastinate, you sleep in, and you always say you're going to do things but you never really get around to it, right? So you need to transform to be the successful business person. But how we transform is by renewing our mind. And the process of renewing your mind happens every single day. It happens every moment you're confronted by something that reminds you of who you used to be, right? So whether you gave up a bad habit, yes, every single day you're transforming and becoming more and more of a better person, more and more like Christ. But every so often something will happen that reminds you of who you used to be, right? So your drinking buddies will call you up, or that dude will hit you up and be like, hey, what's happening, right? And in that moment you have the opportunity to say no, right? Because you're becoming a new creation, and therefore you need to renew your mind. You need to renew your mind about the way you typically think about things, the way you typically see things. If you, for example, as a man, view women as sexual objects, right? And you want to transform into a great husband because you no longer want to conform to the pattern of this world of being a player, right? You have to every day renew your mind in how you see women. If you typically objectify a woman every time you see her, every single day when that moment happens, you need to renew your mind to how you see women, how you think about women. On the other hand, if you are a woman and you've never had a good relationship with men because your dad wasn't around or whatever the case may be, and for you, your stance is always aggressive towards men, but you're out here trusting and praying to God for a husband, but every man that comes around, you're just like, and you're just very antagonistic, right? You need to renew your mind in terms of how you think about men. You need to renew your mind in terms of how you see men. And not every man is going to be just like your father, or just like the ex that broke your heart, or wherever that hurt or brokenness happened, right? So in order to transform into somebody that can be someone's wife and receive the gift of having a husband, because that's what you've been praying for, you need to renew your mind in terms of how you think about that. And for somebody who has a grave amount of hurt, maybe something happened in the past that really hurt you, and perhaps it hurt your self-esteem, it hurt your self-image, it hurt the way you see yourself, the way that you think about yourself, and you want to see yourself as beautiful, you want to see yourself as powerful, as impactful, as empowered, as strong, as capable, as intelligent and wise, and all of these things, but you have these doubts and these false truths that are always challenging you. So every single day you need to renew your mind to those things. You need to renew your mind and say, no, I'm not a failure because I'm more than a conqueror in Christ Jesus. No, I'm not weak because my weakness, God has made me strong. No, I'm not stupid because I've got the mind of Christ. No, I'm not this because this. And you can, for every negative thought, I promise you, you can find a scripture for it, right? And I also say renew your mind, very importantly. If you've also decided to take on new habits, if you've broken something old and you want to start doing something new that you know will take you forward, yes, at first it seems difficult because you have habits. Your brain has a specific pattern on thinking around how you do things, right? You have a routine. Your system just wants to do certain things naturally. And so when you're transforming and becoming this new person, yes, you have the Word, you have God, you have your community of people that are constantly reminding you of who you're becoming and what you want to be and the things that you want to do. But the fact that you have to fight every single day is to renew your mind. Remind yourself that you are a new person, you are a new creation. You don't do those tired old things anymore that keep you bound, that keep you chained and hold you back. And so every single day you're renewing your mind towards the things of God, and you're renewing your mind to what God says your life should be. You're renewing your mind to how you know your life should be. You're renewing your mind to positivity. You're renewing your mind to the good things about you, the good things that God says about you, to the promises of God, and you're letting go of the doubts and the failures and the chains that used to keep you bound. If you have questions or something interesting that you'd like to share with us around how you are renewing your mind, or even how you find yourself challenged in renewing your mind, please do comment below. Find me on social media at Ntsiki Mkhize and share your questions and comments there. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, God bless and stay tuned to Faith Spaces.